So good day. I'm going to show you something I did over 10 years ago. So by using CAD, I created this model based on existing floor plans, blueprints of the Metropolitan Theater. Why do CAD at all? Because there are programs like SketchUp, which later on we'll also cover. SketchUp is relatively easy to manipulate rather than AutoCAD, as you will see. But there are some things that SketchUp cannot do that AutoCAD can. So AutoCAD is basically the staple of any office. It's the default program for any office. And as you can see here, it can do more complex things or construction or more detailed and more precision. For example, in SketchUp, you can't do these tiny sculptural things. So you need to have another program to do that. Here I'm showing you the footage of my old laptop, which I'm still using currently. And it's important to have a good resource or good hardware. My CPU, which is just a dual core, so this is a 7-year-old laptop. It's currently running at 73% running OBS, which is the program that I use to record this. And the GPU is only gets taxed when if I'm zooming in or rotating. So anyway, this is the result of that generation. So it took me a long while. I think I remember 1 month, and I wanted to see if I could do it. Okay, so the reason why is I want a more detailed model of the Metropolitan Theater, which is this architectural piece in Lawton, Manila, Art Deco. So probably I'll show a footage of what the end product was. So I used it to create a watercolor piece, which is 36 inch by 48 inches or 1 meter by 1.5 meters of watercolor paper. I just wanted to see if I could do a big piece like this. I painstakingly did all the details, and you could see how far I went with this. So it's great. Now CAD is actually very good at accuracy. So CAD is great for accuracy, and you could see this result of being able to generate a lot of. But when you're thinking, when you're coming up with ideas for designs, this is not a great tool for thinking because it slows down your thinking. You cannot generate 10 schemes, for example, in 1 hour. So sketching is really more into for generating ideas and having a dialogue with yourself. AutoCAD is more like, okay, here's the idea. I want to solidly model it or solidly have a look at it in 3 dimensions. So I've used this model for generating numerous angles of this structure, as you can see here. So the very first thing that we need to do prior to proceeding to the 3D is to save this file as. All right, so we're gonna go up to the letter A, save as, drawing, and change this to our format. Okay, for example, first your surname first, followed by week 2, lesson 1, and of course save it, press enter. So we have it here, and it's renamed that you could see it on the upper part of your interface. Now, one of the things that we need to do is to convert this first into like a block. Normally, what we do in the offices is that we use an external reference, this as an external reference, and we do the 3D. But that's separates the files, and in this case I don't want to do that. What we're going to be doing first is to switch to our layer 0 as a general layer, and we shall do a block command. A block is trying to put this into one entity. When we say entity, meaning just one object. The block command is here. You could pull this down and just press block. However, the shortcut for that one would be just B for block. It's important for you to put that into layer 0 first. Of course, your layering is. So I'm gonna just call this floor plan. I'm just gonna first pick the objects. So this is the objects. We have a base, and then it's already set to convert to a block. So when I select the object, and then I just window select from left to right, so that anything within this window is picked. And of course, I'm still in that command of picking. So I just press enter once because that's all the objects that I want to pick. And it goes back to the interface. It's asking for a pick point. Well, a pick point is just that it's where the grip is going to be. So I'm just going to put this in this corner. I'm just going to click once, and that's it. The Z must be equated to a level 0. Okay, so that's taken. So I'm just going to go and say OK, and it's now blocked. When you say blocked, that's what I said, the grip. Okay, so this is just one entity. And if you take a closer look at this, if I make a copy CO, so since I already picked it, I'm just going to invoke the command copy and make a copy of this, and there you go. But now it's relatively the same thing, right? And you can always separate this and unblock it by exploding. So X is the command for that, and I'm just gonna explode this, and everything goes back to its usual state. So now what we're gonna be doing is to manipulate the views. Okay, so currently it's in single view port, and what I need if I want a multi-view port is to go over to the ribbon for view, and then we go to vertical. Okay, so they have the same object being viewed in two viewports, but this one on the right, I'd like to put it into isometric view. Here it's in block. Now I'm ready to go and construct this in 3D. So this is what we call a view cube. So you could rotate this if you want to orbit around, to pivot, to take a look at it closer. It's not exactly. If you want to go to the other side, just press that corner. If you go on to top again, you go that, and you go back to this isometric on the right. If you want to take a look at the back, okay, that's what you can do with this. Other ways of doing rotating is by holding shift and pressing your middle mouse button, and you can orbit freely. So you can pivot that, going this way, going down, up, and even below it, above it. And you can have this tool. This tool comes up, and you can pan. But normally when I pan, I don't use this tool, this side tool. So what I do is I press my middle mouse button just to pan around. You have that hand icon coming out. Before we create, one thing to keep in mind is that the floor of this house is above ground, the level that I intended. So it's going to be raised up something like about 0.5, 0.45 to be more exact. So the very first thing that I'm going to be doing is going to be raising this thing up. Now, before you start doing 3D, you need to create a new layer for that. So in this case, I'm going to indicate them by first starting 3D as your designation. Here I'm going to create 3D floor because it's going to be in capital letters floor. Anything after a first designation is 4 letters. So I'm keeping it to 4 letters as a designation. 8. So the next one is going to be, you start with 3D again, dash wall. Floor, you can put any color that you'd like, but you know, I'd rather you stick to these first, the first 9 colors. So as far as the floor is concerned, I'm just gonna put it to red. Wall, let's put it into cyan. Click onto the floor, and I want it to be current with this green check mark in XD layer manager. First, I'll just explain some basics of 3D generation in AutoCAD. If I do a rectangle here and I extrude EXT, extruding is the command. Okay, I'm going to select the rectangle. Okay, a rectangle is a closed polygon. If I click that and I want to just press enter, and you get this. So you could extrude this, and then if I put in a number, say 3 meters, and this is what we have. It looks like a translucent cube of some sorts. So what we need to do is to hide this if we want to look at this. This is solid modeling, right? So it has depth, it has length, and then it has height. In order for me to get out of this is to regen, because I can't move or rotate when you hide the 3D in this view. That is a solid model concept. Now if I change my view here, okay, so you can hide it by HI, enter. Here you can change the mode. If you go to conceptual, it looks more solid, of course. And then you can rotate. Now if I explode this, it becomes, if I try to erase these, right, erase one of that, it becomes a set of surfaces. Okay, a surface is generated by being bounded by edges. If I erase, okay, erase that, I just erase the surface of that, and what's left is the edge. If I erase that further, yes. So these are 2-dimensional and they don't have widths, so they're surfaces. Right? So there's solid modeling, and this is a surface model. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a polygon. So you can only extrude a closed polygon, just to show you also that you can extrude polylines. So polyline is different from line. So if I'm going to invoke that, if I'm going to create a polyline and try to extrude it, EXT, you would see that, you know, it creates this surface model. If I go back to my 2D, this is what you see. It has grids on it. Okay, so I'm going to create the floor by constructing polygon lines. PL, enter. Of course, it snaps to these centers. So make sure that the endpoints, you go to the endpoints, okay, the exact endpoints. I'm going to trace this over. I'm going to, so I'm panning with, by pressing and zooming out with my wheel mouse. Here, press here to this corner, and of course I knew that X or cross white cross, it means that that was where I began. So all I have to do is close this by pressing C, enter. You can see the polygon line construction. I'm going to extrude it by 0.45. EXT for extrude. Select the polygon line set. Click once and then enter. So the value for this one is going to be 0.45. It's 0.45 above ground. Thing about the floor plan now, it's underneath this. So what we're going to do is to put it above this. Okay, I'm gonna move this floor plan block. Move. M is the shortcut for move. Click onto which object you want to move. Enter once. So I'm gonna grip it here because that's the 0 level of the floor plan. I'm gonna go raise it up until it clicks to that 0.45. In order to check that if this floor plan is in the level, you can always check by rotating and orbiting, and you can see there's no gap, no spaces. If you wanted to be really sure that that's in the level 0.45, what you could do is you can invoke the command ID, identify. If you click onto the endpoint, it gives you the Z value, and I could see it here in the command prompt and also on this. So the command prompt, you always have to raise it up just to see the value. So the next thing that we need to do is to make the walls. So the first thing that we need to do before that is to switch to the proper layer, which is 3D wall. And since this is a rectangular in form, I'm going to use rectangle, REC, and go over to here in the meantime. So the height of my wall is going to be 3 meters. So I'm going to extrude it. Now before extruding, of course, we need to create like the inside of this, because I'm not just going to be doing a surface wall. Okay, instead, okay, so I'm just going to offset this by 0.2. Seeing the value, since it's 0, type in 2.2 and go inside. There you go, just to check that it is, there's another polygon inside. Yes, I'm gonna extrude both of them for the meantime. EXT. Make sure that you have chosen the 2 squares. Type in the value 3 if you want to go in this direction. Yes. It may seem that there are 2 walls, but in fact there are 2 solids. So the smaller solid is within the bigger solid. And if you want to check that, you can always go conceptual or hide. And this is what you see. 2 blocks existing in one space. But that's not what we want. In order to resolve this so that you can only get the exterior wall element, is to subtract. So SU is the subtract command. Enter once. So first it's asking for where do you want to subtract from. So it's the bigger object. So I click and enter once. Now it's asking what to subtract. So always look at your prompt every time you have these commands in use. So here we go. I'm just gonna enter once because that's the object that we wanted to subtract. So now you have the exterior wall. I'm going to go back to my 2D wireframe, and this is what you see. If I want to check if the construction is going correctly, I use hide, HI, and then after which you can't move or you can't rotate anymore. You need to regen, RE, or regenerate, enter. And of course save. I'm saving it. Control S. Always remember to Control S or save. So now we're going to proceed into making holes for the windows. And the way to do windows is to punch holes into these. So again, we're going to invoke the command. Let's start with the doors. So I'm still in my layer 3D wall. I'm going to create first a rectangle from this corner, of course the hole, excluding, of course, avoiding the door jambs. Extrude this at the height of, extrude this first. Okay, that rectangle. I'm going to extrude this by a 2.15. Of course, I'm going to do this with the other side. I'm going to press my shift and middle mouse button to rotate, orbit around. Do the same thing. Extrude, EXT. 2.15. The reason why there's an odd 2.15 is that a regular door is about 2.1 to be more exact, and you would consider also, of course, the spacing for the door frame, which is another 0.05 meters. So currently these are solid objects that within this solid wall. So what I'm going to do is subtract this. Okay, so to subtract, SU, choose the object that you want to subtract from, enter once, and then you select the objects that you want to subtract. So in this case, it's pretty hard to select them. They have to be highlighted. There you go. And there you go. Enter once. And now they're subtracted. For the windows, okay? The reason why I go for 2D wireframe is that I could see where things are. And that's the case. So I'm gonna create blocks so that I could to subtract from. Okay, so I already did 1 and 2. Going back to my layer manager, LA, enter. Let's change that so that you could see it a bit better. Okay, I'm gonna go for magenta and just get out so that you could see that, you know, these are already done over the cyan 2D wall. So I'm gonna go here, REC, rotate. So I have everything here. Okay, I'm gonna extrude the same types of windows except for, of course, the toilet and bath window because it's a bit higher. So the height of the openings are EXT. Select the rectangles that I want to extrude. Enter once. It's going to be 1.2. So 1.2 meters. Right? But they're not at the height that I want them to be. So I have to move them at the Z axis. So I'm going to invoke the command move M. Choose the objects you want to move, which are these. Enter once. I'm going to select a pick point, a point of my displacement point. I'm going to click here once. And of course, it's going to go, you can move it to anywhere. But I'm more particular that, you know, this is going to be in the Z axis. So I'm just going to do that Z axis. Okay, it's locking on to the edge of this block. And of course, punch in the numbers 0.9, which is the sill height. So it's not really matching up to the door's opening. So I need this to be a bit more consistent. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go and press this in the wheel view. I'm going to be pressing this front, and this shows me that they're not at all the same. So I'll go back to my isometric view. I'm gonna drag this along, and I'm going to click onto that. Okay, I'm gonna click onto the door, and it sort of risen up a bit. Okay, so the door opening here is, you can lock it on and can use it as a reference. I'm gonna do the same thing as for the others. Okay, there's a tiny arrow again. Pull it up, hover over to the door's corner endpoint, and it should have raised it up a bit by 0.05. I'm going to do this again with this, and there you go. Here again for this one, and this one, and press escape. Yep. So if I go to the front, okay, I missed one. This one. Endpoint. Has to be that endpoint. So currently, if I go back to my conceptual visual style, you can see that I have not yet subtracted these. So what I need to do is SU, enter once. Okay, it's hard to select them at this conceptual stage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my 2D wireframe. So subtract first the big piece, which is the wall assembly, and then I can choose them easier with this 2D wireframe view, and then press enter once. You don't see the effect, but you can always check, of course, by hiding HI, and there you go. Regen, RE, enter, and here we go. So the last thing that I want to subtract, of course, is the punch hole for this window. The sill height for the toilet and bath window is going to be 1.8 meters, but the height is going to be something like 0.6 meters in opening. Extrude this by 0.6. I'm going to choose that object. It's going to go up 0.6. And I'm going to move this M, click the object that you want, press enter once, and then choose your pick point. Okay, so I'm going to go up by 1.8. Of course, it's above a person's head, but in this case, it's not working out. It has to be, it doesn't look good if this thing is not at a level that is there. And so I'm going to reduce the height. I'm just going to click that arrow and then hover over to the door opening, and if I want to find out what this height is, DI distance 0.35. That's not working out. That's not what I want. All right, so in order to do, okay, 1.8, okay, a person is roughly about, for me, for example, I'm 1.71 meters. 1.6 would be okay. I can move this down by another 0.2 meters. So I need to move this down by 0.2 meters. First, move command M. Click the object that you want to move. Pick your displacement point, or where you want to pick it up. Okay, you can go down and punch in 0.2, and of course you want to match the opening with this door. Now I want to know what this is, what distance, what height. By distance, DI, click or up. Yes, that sounds good. 0.55. So if I want to know what the height of this windowsill is, distance, it's 1.6. So my head would be just above this. I can still reach up this window and I'll be fine. Of course, subtract this. Don't forget to subtract SU if you have this. So enter once for the object to subtract from, and now I'm choosing the object to subtract. If hide, there's a hole. Regen, that's it. So all the windows are now at the level of the opening of the door. Window opening and door opening should have the same opening heights, or it's gonna look strange, right? So currently, you know, we have this. We don't have a steps yet. So each step I've configured to be 0.15. Of course, that's the kind of low, but that's the minimum that you can have for steps. Let's construct that. Okay, I'm gonna go back to my 3D floor layer. What I can do here is to make rectangles. Extrude them by 0.15 for the meantime. EXT, but going down at 0.15. So I'm going to move, of course, each step is going to be 0.15. So therefore, I'm going to move this down for the meantime. 0.15, these two. Move command, choose the two objects here. I'm going to click that as my displacement. Since I know for a fact that that's 0.15, I was just going to just lock there. I'm going to move this first step going down. So this should be 0, 0. So if I want to identify what that is, where that is, I'm going to go ID enter. And the Z value is supposed to be 0.00. Okay, so we have the steps already here. So what I'm going to do here is to match this. So since I extruded down, the arrow is actually going to point down. So I'm just going to take advantage of that. And I'm just going to click onto this endpoint so that it levels to the same. So that's the number of steps. If I hide this, HI, this should show up like that. If I wanted to see this in Conceptual, this is what I see. So it's gonna go up there. Okay, you can do the same again, of course, for the other staircase here. So please do the other set of steps on the other side. We can go on to the next phase, which is lesson 2. We're gonna be creating the doors and windows in 3D.